This is Lindsay Wagner. Here are some scenes from the next episode of The Bionic Woman.
Robots, I call them fembots.
These mannequins aren't going to fool anybody.
Good morning, Mr. Goldman.
Good morning, Miss Callahan.
Kidnap Oscar Goldman.
I order all action units to kill me as soon as possible. Goodbye.
Jamie, turn the magnetic car!
Capture. Increase power on the fembots.
You're no match for us, Summers.
Change, but you're wondering when. One can be a lonely number. Sometimes it makes you wonder if that sun will ever shine again. You really don't know what to do to get it going right. So you figure let it rest a while and just give up the fight. But as you do, suddenly it all comes around. And what you thought you couldn't find, you find. Bless you.
Looking good together, looking good, looking good. Looking good together, looking good. Good things to share, good friends are there. Looking good together.
Yeah?
Hi, I thought you might like to come to my party.
Why, how nice of you.
UNCBS, you're looking good.
Okay, trust me, I'm going to get to Judy Landers in just a moment, but first, I have to go on a quick tangent. Flashback to 1978 in a TV movie called BJ and the Bear. Of course, the TV movie became a TV series, and I became an avid viewer, a big fan of the show. So much so that I seriously contemplated a career in long-haul trucking. It seemed like an honest day's work, and you got to hit the open road with a chimp like Bear. Or some other cool pet. It didn't have to be exactly the same, but you get it. The long-haul trucker answers to no one. And as the show progressed, it became clear to me that being a long-haul trucker was also kind of a chick magnet. Each week, BJ would get involved with a beautiful girl, and one of those beautiful girls on the show became a regular during the third season. Her name on the show was Stax. Yeah, I know that's pretty tacky when you think about it. And she was played by Judy Landers. Somewhere along the way, I realized trucking probably wasn't for me, but trust me, Judy made a very compelling argument for it. Oh yeah, and Bear too. Well, until he went crazy and started attacking people, but that, my friends, is a story for another day. So anyway, getting back to Judy, Ms. Landers was not an unknown actress when she joined the show. She, along with her sister Audrey, were pretty much the latest thing back then. They were all over TV as guest stars on various shows such as Love Boat, Vegas, Charlie's Angels, and Fantasy Island. And Judy was also on another one of my favorite shows from the 80s, Knight Rider. And even though I shouldn't mention it because it was such an odd show, she was also a regular on something called Madam's Place. And yes, I will admit to watching it, but only for Judy. Like I said, these girls were extremely popular back in the day. Hef tried to get them to pose for Playboy, which they did, but their layout wasn't your typical photo shoot. In other words, they kept their clothes on. I actually preferred their appearance at Runner's World. Turns out the sisters were into fitness and running, something that I've enjoyed over the years. Who'd have thunk? Years later, Runner's World would run the photos again during an anniversary issue. So where is Judy now? Well, here's a relatively recent picture of the sisters with their mother Ruth. As you can see, time has been very kind to both of them. Well, actually all three of them. Way to go, Ruth. Judy has been married to former Major League Baseball pitcher Tom Niedenfuer since November of 1987. They have two daughters, Lindsay, born in 89, and Christy, born in 91. After taking time off to live her life and raise her kids, Judy once again collaborated with her sister, Audrey, on a couple of children's shows in the late 90s called the Hug-a-Bug Club and the Treehouse Club. As you can see from the photo on the right with Judy's daughters, the apple hasn't fallen too far from the tree. In fact, daughter Christy competed in the Miss USA pageant representing the fine state of Tennessee. And lest you thought that I was going to forget about Audrey, she married businessman Donald Berkowitz in May of 1988. They have two children, twins Adam and Daniel. They were born in 1993. This is Daniel here. He is an accomplished composer, songwriter, and musician, all-around talented guy. And he's collaborating with his mother right now on a pop musical, something kind of edgy and dark according to what I could find on the internet. So that's it. Do you remember Judy and her sister Audrey? And if so, did you have a favorite? Audrey had a pretty successful music career. I can see why Daniel's going down that path. But that probably doesn't stop me from picking Team Judy. Anyway, please share your memories in the comment section below, and while you're at it, please click on the thumbs up icon, and why not consider subscribing to my channel. I talk about music, movies, and television, mostly from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching.
Hey everybody, it's the M&M's Candies Gang!
Who takes peanuts and chocolate? Who takes peanuts and chocolate? And mixes them just right. And mixes them just right. Gives them rainbow colors so they're always nice and bright. The M&M's Gang, the M&M's Gang, the M&M's Gang, and we add a lot to make it all taste good.
M&M's, the milk chocolate melts in your mouth, not in your hand.
All right!
What's your Scooby-Doo? We're gonna follow you. We're gonna solve that mystery. I see you, Scooby-Doo. We're gonna follow you. What's your Scooby-Doo? What's your Scooby-Doo? We're coming after you. We're gonna solve that mystery. I see you, Scooby-Doo. We're coming after you. What's your Scooby-Doo? So look back. You may find another clue. Scooby-Snacks. We'll be waiting here for you!
Of all the Marvel comic book characters, Spider-Man has always been my favorite. Growing up, I loved the animated series. But this video is not about the Ralph Bakshi classic cartoon. Instead, let's spend a little time talking about my favorite live-action Spider-Man from 70s television. So first, let's talk about the version of Spidey that showed up on network TV, CBS TV to be exact. During the latter half of the 70s, CBS seemed to be the home for Marvel comic book characters on television. Most well known was, of course, the Incredible Hulk. But I remember a couple of Captain America movies, a Doctor Strange movie, and of course, what I'm talking about here today. This version of Spider-Man debuted in a couple of television movies starring Nicholas Hammond. Hammond was a bit old in my mind to play Peter Parker, but he wasn't my biggest gripe in terms of casting. It was Robert F. Simon who was cast as J. Jonah Jameson in the second TV movie in the series that, well, he wasn't my J. Jonah. He just didn't seem blustery enough. I needed an actor who could really project his absolute disgust for the wall crawler, and I never thought this guy could. Quick piece of trivia, David White, who played Darren's boss Larry Tate in Bewitched, was J. Jonah in the first TV movie. Anyway, let me step off my J. Jonah soapbox and talk about Nicholas Hammond for just a moment. Yep, he does look familiar, and yes, he was one of the children in The Sound of Music. He wasn't a bad Peter Parker. He really wasn't. Just a bit old for the role. Personally, I liked his appearance on The Brady Bunch. Yep, I'll admit it, I have a soft spot for Sherwood Schwartz comedies, especially The Brady Bunch. More to come on that show on another day, but Hammond's appearance on The Brady Bunch just happened to be during one of my favorite episodes, where it's a classic episode, in fact, where Marcia gets hit in the face with a football. When her nose swells up, she learns some really important lessons about how people treat each other based on their appearances. Hammond also got a chance to make a guest appearance on the TV version of Logan's Run with his Sound of Music co-star, the lovely Heather Menzies. And according to Wikipedia, after the Spider-Man series ended, Hammond guest starred on a lot of shows in the early 80s, including The Love Boat, Magnum P.I., Murder, She Wrote, and recurring roles on Falcon Crest and Dallas. It was when he was cast as yachtsman Dennis Conner in the 1986 Australian TV miniseries The Challenge that Hammond realized he loved Australia and decided to stay there. Hammond shows up on TV and movies every now and again, but really more than anything else, he just seems to be enjoying life. Anyway, getting back to your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Well, folks, without CGI and all of the cool effects that we take for granted today, the web slinger's special abilities were, to be frank, at least on this show, a little less special. The team involved in the series did their best with what they had, given their budget. They were a network TV show, but really the web slinging, the wall crawling was all pretty lame. It's probably the reason why it would be many years before another live-action version of Spider-Man was attempted again. And that's not to say that the movies and the series weren't enjoyable. They certainly had their moments. One of my favorite was when Joanna Cameron guest starred. But guess what, folks? This live-action version isn't my favorite. In fact, the live-action version of Spider-Man that's my favorite, well, it starred a little-known actor / puppeteer / dancer named Danny Seagren. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, I bet he's talking about Spidey Super Stories on that educational program, The Electric Company, you would be 100% correct. And if you're thinking, what the heck, the web slinging and the wall crawling on this version was even worse than the CBS series, well, you'd be 100% correct as well. But you know what? I don't care. This is the live-action version that is nearest and dearest to my heart. Well, at least until we got the Sam Raimi movies. Once we went there, well, game over. So the story behind the story is that Marvel allowed the Electric Company, which was part of the Public Broadcasting System's educational lineup, to use the character of Spider-Man free of charge. It was Stan Lee and team's chance to do a little good in this world, and of course, it also introduced future customers to one of Marvel's biggest draws. And these Spidey Super Stories were 3 to 5 minute adventures that started appearing on the Electric Company during Season 4. In this version of Spider-Man, our hero didn't speak out loud. Instead, kids would need to read comic balloons. Yep, there's the educational part of the series. But beyond helping kids read, the episodes were really silly and a whole lot of fun. There were no special effects for things like Spider-Man spinning his web. So what we would get instead would be an actual comic book panel. Throughout it all, Danny Seagren just crossed his fingers and hoped to high heavens that the creative team involved didn't figure out that because there was no Peter Parker in this version of Spider-Man, they really could have put almost anyone that was roughly the same size and stature in the costume. Danny's a really interesting guy, and there are a couple of great articles on him out there on the interwebs. Just do a Google search and you'll find them. His last name is spelled Seagren. These days, Danny hits the comic conventions from time to time and leads the kind of life that one might expect of someone who never really showed his face on TV. Complete anonymity, unless of course he wants to draw attention to his famous past. So that's it, folks. Do you remember seeing Spider-Man on the Electric Company or on the primetime series on CBS? If so, what did you think? Did you prefer one over the other? I'm betting it would have a lot to do on your age. Let me know in the comment section below, and while you're at it, please click on the thumbs up icon, and why not consider subscribing to my channel. I talk about music, movies, and television, mostly from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching.
Walmart is my favorite store. I shop there 'cause I am poor. Warning signs on slippery floors. A nice old lady at the door. Thinking of myself again. Wondering where I have been. When do boys turn into men? 'Cause I cry when I bruise my shin. And the babe starts crying
got you wondering when can be a lonely number. Sometimes it makes you wonder if that sun will ever shine again. You really don't know what to do to get it going right, so you figure let it rest a while and just give up the fight. But as you do, suddenly it all comes around. And what you thought you couldn't find, you find. Bless you.
Looking good together, looking good, looking good. Looking good together, looking good, looking good. Good things to share, good friends are there. Looking good together.
Yeah?
Hi. I thought you might like to come to my party.
Why, how nice of you.
UNCBS, you're looking good.
When I was 10 years old, Land of the Lost debuted on NBC as a Saturday morning kids show. Produced by the fine folks over at Sid and Marty Croft Productions, this show was a little different than their previous efforts. This time the stakes were higher, as the Marshall family are transported from our world to another one where prehistoric dangers are around every corner. As a kid, I ate this stuff up. The show ran for 3 seasons, 43 episodes in all, which if you're familiar with any of the other Sid and Marty Croft shows, that's the equivalent of a show running for 10 years or more. Sid and Marty usually only had their shows run for a single season, or maybe 2 if it was super popular, and then they'd move on to the next project and find ways to repackage the old stuff over and over. Great examples of this are shows like The Bugaloos, Lidsville, and Electra Woman and Dinah Girl. But Land of the Lost definitely deserved a second season and a third season. It was just that popular. Sid and Marty would later include Land of the Lost in their syndicated Croft Super Show package, and reruns would also find their way back to network television again in the 80s, finding a whole new audience of fans. So now that we've established well enough that Land of the Lost was a pretty cool show, let me take a couple of minutes and share with you 5 things that I didn't know until very recently that you may not know either. Number 1. Although uncredited, Star Trek alumnus David Gerrold, writer of the classic episode The Trouble with Tribbles, was heavily involved in the creation of this show. As a Season 1 story editor, Gerrold, along with Alan Fushko, helped with the development of scripts and helped to flesh out the simple kids show concept that the brothers Sid and Marty Croft had come up with. In fact, a number of well-respected writers in the science fiction field contributed scripts to the series, including Larry Niven, Theodore Sturgeon, and Ben Bova. And along with Gerrold, a number of other Star Trek people were involved, such as D.C. Fontana and Walter Koenig. Number 2. Hey, that's not Rick Marshall. Yep, Uncle Jack ended up keeping an eye on Will and Holly during Season 3 due to a contract dispute with actor Spencer Milligan. Milligan not only wanted a raise, but he wanted to be compensated for the use of his image on the merchandise being sold to kids everywhere. Instead of addressing Milligan's concerns, the decision was made to send Rick back to Earth and through a series of convoluted events transport his brother Jack, who had been dutifully searching for the Marshalls, into their alternate reality. Veteran actor Ron Harper, hey, I remember him from the TV version of Planet of the Apes, was brought on board to play Uncle Jack. Number 3, when ABC remade the series in 1991 with A Different Family, The Porters, the character of the beautiful jungle girl Krista was originally intended to be Holly Marshall, still trapped in this prehistoric reality. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, the deal with Kathy Coleman, the actress who played Holly in the original series, never got made, and as a result the character was rewritten to be Krista, a girl who came from 1960s San Francisco and was transported into the Land of the Lost when she was very young. Number 4, that 2009 movie starring Will Ferrell? Well, the Croft Brothers aren't that fond of it. I guess that shouldn't be too much of a surprise because most people aren't in love with that movie, and critics absolutely hated it, citing it as a low point in Will Ferrell's career. Still, I didn't mind it. Not a masterpiece, but there were moments that were mildly amusing. And last but not least, at number 5, we've got the Croft Brothers, who are hard at work developing a new version of the show for television. This time they promise it is going to be even more serious, and each episode will be an hour long. Boy, I hope they really pull it off. That would be awesome. I also hope that this remake involves the Marshall family, all of them. Rick, Will, and Holly, and what the heck, maybe even Uncle Jack. So there you go. Are you a fan of Land of the Lost? If so, which version? The 70s version, the 90s version, or maybe even the Will Ferrell movie? It's okay if you liked it. I did. Let me know in the comments section below, and while you're at it, give me a thumbs up and think about subscribing to my channel. I talk about music, movies, and television, mostly from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. And as always, most importantly, thank you so much for watching.
Only from Atari. Made especially for systems from Atari. The video game that lets you help E.T. get home. Just in time for Christmas. Happy holidays.
And now for some really good stuff.
Do you believe in magic? 'Cause I believe that I do. Yes, I can see, I believe that it's magic. Your mission is magic, your love will shine through. Do you believe in magic? 'Cause I believe that I do. Yes, I can see, I believe that it's magic. Your mission is magic, your love will shine through.
Now you can be Batman in your very own Batmobile by Marx. Comes complete with Batcape. No batteries needed, ever. Just back up to wind the powerful spring motor. Set the brake. Release and... holy blast off! Away you go in your very own Batmobile by Marx.
I know I am going to pronounce her name wrong. I just know it. Part of me wants to say that this lovely lady's name is pronounced Jean-Marie, but I can't find a single interview or video where her name is pronounced that way, so I'm going to butcher it and say Jean-Marie. So why are we talking about Jean-Marie Hone today? Well, because she was in a Saturday morning TV show called Arc 2. It was a show that I really dug. In fact, CBS was my go-to network for Saturday morning program right around when this show debuted, because they also had a couple of live-action superhero shows that I was pretty darn fond of. So let's talk about Arc 2 for a minute. The show was set in the 25th century after the Earth had been decimated by the effects of waste, pollution, and warfare. Each week, 3 young scientists, along with a monkey, would wander around in a high-tech vehicle called the Arc 2, hence the show's name, to search for remnants of humanity, reintroducing lost ideas, and when possible, reigniting a spark of humanity into a world that had fallen into a very dark age. Along with Hun, who was a character named Ruth on the show, it also starred Terry Lester as Arc 2's Commander Jonah, Jose Flores as Samuel, and I don't know the name of the chimpanzee, but he was called Adam on the show. And Arc 2 kind of reminded me of a Gene Roddenberry TV movie that I'd seen a few years earlier called Earth 2, with a dash of Logan's Run mixed in for good measure. It was fairly low budget, and like all of the live-action shows in the 70s, there was always, and I mean always, a lesson to be learned by the end of the episode. Ruth and Samuel, they were my favorite characters on the show, and I guess I liked the monkey a lot too. Jonah, on the other hand, well, he wasn't my favorite. Not sure why, just couldn't relate. And speaking of not understanding why, I'm not sure why this episode sticks out as one of my favorites, but I guess anytime you can include Robbie the Robot in an episode, well, it shouldn't be missed. It happened on episode 10. You can find it right here on YouTube, folks. So after this video, why don't you Google that and enjoy. Now, I know that it feels like Arc 2 was on TV for a long time. CBS had it as part of its Saturday morning lineup for almost 4 years, but the weird thing is that much like the shows by Sid and Marty Croft, these Filmation productions only had first-run episodes for 1 or 2 seasons max. In the case of Arc 2, it was just 1 season. New episodes ran only from September to December of 1976. There were only 15 episodes ever made, but CBS, well, they ran them over and over through 1979. So while reruns of Arc 2 were playing on CBS, Jean Marie had moved on and become a recurring character on competing network NBC's underwater sci-fi adventure series The Man from Atlantis. Of the 17 episodes produced, Jean Marie appeared in 9 of them as a crew member named Jane. I remember watching Man from Atlantis. It was one of those shows that had so much potential. Heck, it even had its own Marvel comic. Sadly, NBC didn't really have that much faith in it and canceled it after a single season. Jean Marie continued to act, showing up on TV shows like Hawaii Five-0 and The Hardy Boys every now and again. But then, if you look at her IMDb page, you can see that things really started to slow down. It was clear that acting was no longer her top priority. Her last working gig was a movie called Blade in Hong Kong, which, although you wouldn't know it looking at either of these posters, actually starred her friend from Arc 2, Terry Lester. After that, she just disappeared. So where did she go? Well, the easiest answer that I could find was on the MeTV website, where they gave a quick 1-paragraph update saying that these days she's a pharmacist in Southern California. Well, the first thing that I think about that is, well, it's pretty cool that she's able to get her degree and journey down a career path decidedly different than the finicky world of showbiz. But the MeTV update left me wanting to understand why Jean Marie would go down such a different path. So a little more sleuthing led me to a web page that appears to be a blog of the father of Jean Marie's children. And after reading a few of his posts and looking at a handful of pictures, it's obvious to me that Jean Marie made the right decision. Most likely the driving force behind her decision to leave show business would be her 2 children, a boy and a girl, who are both now grown adults. Most of the photos on the blog are of Jean Marie, the mother, not the actress. For privacy purposes, I'm not including any of the pics with her family. Here are a couple snippets that demonstrate that life outside of Hollywood, well, it's been pretty darn good to Jean Marie. She's just as beautiful as ever. If you really want to see more, it's not hard. Just ask Google. So that's it. What do you think? Were you a fan of Arc 2 and in particular Jean Marie Hun? Or did you prefer the other live-action shows that showed up on CBS like Shazam, Space Academy, or Jason of Star Command? Let me know in the comments section below, and while you're at it, I would appreciate it if you clicked on the thumbs up icon and maybe even considered subscribing to my channel. I talk about music, movies, and mostly television from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most of all, and as always, thank you so much for watching.
What are we drinking, my lords? We're looking over an orange soda, the Shasta that we adore. You really should try it, the flavor's just right.
Orange soda, just one of 14 great Shasta flavors.
Oh, you're looking over an orange soda, the Shasta that we adore. You're looking over an orange soda, the Shasta that we adore.
Supergirl has the ability to save millions upon millions of lives with her great superpowers. Americans have the ability to save thousands of lives, one at a time.
16,000 people die each year in car crashes that don't have to. Safety belts could save their lives. Safety belts could also prevent thousands from being horribly disfigured or crippled for life. So buckle up. Your life is in your hands.
Born in the arms of the USA, raised on a rockin'
Miss Peggy McMillan. Mayberry's resident nurse. Portrayed by actress Joanna Moore, Peg took a liking to Sheriff Andy Taylor during the first half of Season 3, and truth be told, Sheriff Andy treated her quite badly during the 4 episodes that she appeared on. He didn't like that she was rich, he got annoyed when she tried to do nice things for him, and he got incredibly jealous when an old school friend who just happened to be Mel came into town unannounced to visit Peg. Truthfully, this wasn't the first time that Andy had demonstrated a certain lack of flair with the ladies. During Season 1, Miss Ellie was constantly having to set Andy straight on a number of different things. Sure, it's possible that she may have learned a thing or two along the way, but at the end of the day, it must have been just too much because Ellie bolted town, leaving Mayberry without looking back, and was never heard from again. And we all know about Helen Crump. She'd show up later in Season 3, and the rest, as they say, is history. But what about Peg? One could argue that she had everything. She was beautiful. She was a nurse. She was rich. Did I mention that she was a nurse? And boy, oh boy, was she ever patient with Andy. In just 4 episodes, Ms. Moore made her mark as a strong female character that could stand her ground, but when the time was right, understood what it meant to give and take in a relationship. And I loved her voice. That southern accent really set Peg apart from the other gals in Mayberry. Yet for whatever reason, whether it was a real-world concern on the part of Griffith and the producers that the chemistry just wasn't there between the two, or perhaps something else, Peg just disappeared. And the really strange part is that the last time anyone saw her, she was sipping on hot cocoa around a campfire with Andy and Opie, singing songs and having a great time. Clearly life in Mayberry isn't all that it seems. Could there be a sinister dark side to Mayberry? I mean, one day she's there singing her heart out, and the next day, poof, she's gone. And the really weird part is that much like Ellie, Andy never says a thing about her. Not one. Boy, I sure miss Peg. Not once. So much for the beautiful nurse with a benevolent heart. Andy had moved on, and it would only be a few short months before Ms. Crump would catch the sheriff's eye. All kidding aside, it is entirely possible that Ms. Moore's personal life came calling right around the same time as her stint in Mayberry. She was in a relationship with Ryan O'Neal, who had a popular show of his own called Peyton Place. They were starting a family, and in addition to the responsibilities that came with that, Ms. Moore was really quite in demand, and offers were plentiful for her in the mid to late 60s. I can't find anywhere on the internet that talks about who made the decision for Peg to move on, but it's likely that it was a combination of the things that I've already mentioned. It's rarely just one thing. By the way, that is a young Tatum O'Neal on Ms. Moore's lap. Tatum would, of course, become the youngest Academy Award-winning actress ever, winning an Oscar for her work alongside her father in Paper Moon. So that's it. What do you think? Was Miss Peggy the one that got away? Or did she and actress Eleanor Donahue make the right decision to hightail it out of Mayberry and never look back? Let me know what you think in the comments section, and while you're at it, I'd love a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and I'd be honored if you would consider subscribing to my channel. I talk about music, movies, and television, mostly from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thanks for watching.
Friday, gray jacket, navy pants, white shirt, blue tie. Gannon, dark gray suit, white shirt, blue tie. The dress code of Dragnet. It's part of our television heritage. Whether it was making a bust or making small talk with a lady friend, Joe and Bill wore the same suits in every episode of Dragnet. This conservative wear not only kept the wardrobe budget to a minimum, but also ensured the scenes were always cut together in editing. Of the 98 color episodes of Dragnet, only 5 contain scenes in which you'll find Joe out of uniform. Nick at Night is preserving our television heritage.
Friday wants to know.
You understand your rights?
Nick at Night says, know your TV rights. According to state and federal law, you're entitled to classic TV all night. It's your right.
That makes it as legal as eating a hot dog at the ball game.
That's why, unlike some networks who leave you defenseless in late night, Nick at Night is always on patrol from prime time into the wee hours, there to protect and serve you big TV pleasure.
Flip a dial, instant entertainment.
So exercise your right to classic TV all night with...
Nowadays, there's a lot of interest in identifying a person's roots. You know, we've just got thrown into a big hopper and we're all homogenized and everything is all the same. And it looks to me like that kind of thing would be valuable and important again today. You know, to help people see that there are some diversities in our society, that there's regional differences.
I think I know what you mean, or part of what you mean. At least I'll take what I would like you to mean. The powers that be at CBS, a couple of 2 years ago, decided that there should be no more rural shows on television, for instance. And if you're saying that there are differences in us and that we all don't come from a city and that we all don't come from the same ethnic background, yes, I agree. And I think we do need rural humor. I think it's always been around, and I think it always will be around.
My kids watch Petticoat Junction, for example, on the rerun. They watch your program on our station on the rerun, and they identify with that. They like that. They enjoy that. And I wonder what was in the mind of those people at CBS in deciding that they wanted to divorce themselves and make everybody sound like he's from Indianapolis.
Well, one of the things they believe, and whether this is true, I can't be sure. Part of it's true, I guess. They believe that small-town USA is dying and disappearing from our country. And they believe that television audiences are too sophisticated for the fact that they have watched television for a long time to be able to buy or even enjoy entertainment such as Petticoat Junction or Beverly Hillbillies or our show.
Hello, citizens. I'm taking a holiday from crime fighting in Gotham City. No rest from danger, though, because all around us is that deadly daily danger, traffic. I admire the way all you British children triumph over this danger by learning and using the road safety code, like curb drill. Before crossing the road, you stop at the curb, look right, look left, look right again, and then only if the road is clear, walk quickly across. Now, children, how does it go? At the curb, stop. Look right, look left, look right again. If all's clear, walk quickly across. Remember, be smart, be safe. Always do your curb drill.
Alright, I will admit that Buck Rogers in the 25th Century may never go down in the history books as one of television's finest moments. But if you were a sci-fi obsessed teenager in the late 70s, like me, you were most likely a fan of the show. Sure, it wasn't Star Wars, but it wasn't trying to be an epic in the same way that Battlestar Galactica had been. Instead, this was a show that was focused on fun. Even before Buck Rogers debuted on NBC in the fall of 1979, I had already gotten my first taste of what was to come via the feature film that had been released earlier in the year. I still remember going to our local theater with my father to see the movie. I was so excited because he was usually a stickler about only seeing G-rated movies, and Buck Rogers, much like Star Wars before it, was rated PG. Not sure why the old man decided to take me to it, but hey, I wasn't arguing. And let me just say that the movie did not disappoint. The story of a man out of time, the pretty decent special effects, the awesome space battles, and of course Wilma Deering and Princess Ardala. Yep, this movie had everything. So once I realized that this movie was going to be a weekly TV series, well, I was pretty much counting the days. I think I read the summary from the fall preview edition of TV Guide at least 100 times. Yep, I was pretty sure that this series would be the greatest thing since Star Wars. Heck, it almost made me forget about how sad I'd been to see ABC cancel Battlestar Galactica after just one season. And you know what? The show was pretty dang cool. Lots of wonderful guest stars made an appearance during that first season, including the always amazing Jack Palance in an episode titled Planet of the Slave Girls. You really think that I was going to miss that episode? Jamie Lee Curtis, Roddy McDowell, Marky Post, and even the original Buck Rogers, Buster Crabbe, showed up and gave their all during Season 1. And yes, while there were a couple of episodes that weren't that great, the fact that Princess Ardala, played by Pamela Hensley, made multiple appearances, well, it caused me to have a very forgiving heart. And there was also the Batman connection. What, you say? You aren't aware of the Batman connection? Well, for whatever reason, it seemed like the show was bound and determined to invite actors who had portrayed Batman's major villains in the 1966 TV series into the 25th century. During that first season, we had Cesar Romero, Julie Newmar, and Frank Gorshin. Well, they all guest starred on the show. Yep, the Joker, Catwoman, and the Riddler. As a big fan of the Batman TV series, those casting decisions, well, they put me in seventh heaven. So how much of that was due to Season 1 producer Glenn A. Larson? Truthfully, I don't know. Along with Leslie Stevens, it does seem like Glenn was heavily involved in the series, which came from his production company. It seems like Glenn took the lessons that he learned from Battlestar Galactica and turned Buck Rogers into something very different. But most importantly, he made sure that it had a keen sense of fun. So, when it was announced that Larson would hand over the day-to-day showrunner duties to industry vet John Mantley for Season 2, I really didn't worry too much about the show being much different. The show had garnered decent ratings during Season 1, so why would they change things up much? I'd heard that Gil Gerard, Buck Rogers himself, had been a bit disgruntled about the quality of the scripts during Season 1. He thought they were a little erratic, and he'd complained that he'd like to see Buck tackle some heavier topics. Still, I wasn't worried. This was good old wisecracking Buck Rogers, after all. Season 2 had been delayed because of a writer's strike, and I contented myself during that time to read about the upcoming season in Starlog and other magazines of that sort. Truthfully, I couldn't wait. Now, looking back, I realized that I was waiting for a show that would, well, it would never return. Because whatever the heck that show was that returned in its place, well, it was not my Buck Rogers, it was a freaking imposter. Let me start with the changes. Big changes and little changes. There were just so many. Not the least of which was the complete absence of Princess Ardala. Not sure who thought that was a good idea. Somewhere I remember reading that the show was trying to be more like an updated version of Star Trek. Well, even that show had its recurring villains and beautiful ladies. Nevertheless, apparently during the writer's strike, the princess either died, or was abducted, or just finally gave up on the idea of wooing Buck to the draconian way of life, because Princess Ardala was MIA during the entire second season. By the third or fourth episode, I'd realized that I would never see Princess Ardala again. Thank heavens Pamela Hensley found life after Buck on the series, Matt Houston. And I guess I've got to talk about this guy. I know there are those out there who like Hawk, and I get it. He really wasn't a bad character, although I never really felt like he was truly some sort of Birdman. The reason I don't like Hawk is because he represents everything that went wrong with Season 2. I know I shouldn't blame him, but I do. I can't help it, I really can't. If you're a fan of the animated series Rick and Morty, then you've no doubt encountered a lovely parody or homage, depending on how you look at it, to Hawk, aptly called Birdman. Thankfully, Birdman didn't change the entire tone of Rick and Morty the way Hawk did with Buck Rogers. For that reason, I like Birdman way more than Hawk. Again, it's not Hawk's fault. Sadly, he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Also, to this day, I will never understand why famed voice actor Mel Blanc left the show after Season 1. The first time Twiki spoke during Season 2, I literally fell to the ground in shock. He didn't sound like Twiki at all. No attempt was made to try and sound like the Twiki of Season 1. Instead, it's like someone had told the new guy, hey, Mel Blanc did the voice last year, and he channeled Bugs Bunny instead of going back and listening to Blanc's work as Twiki during the first season. It was just silly and frankly a little sad. Didn't they care? Didn't they think we wouldn't care? Apparently they didn't, but enough of us did that our uproar was heard, and Mel Blanc returned to voice Twiki once again during the final handful of episodes during Season 2. I mentioned earlier that I remember reading that Mantley wanted to take Buck Rogers in the direction of the Trek TV series. Apparently Mantley even toyed with the idea of not bringing Erin Gray back as Wilma Deering for Season 2. It was only after Gil Gerard suggested that he wouldn't continue as Buck if Gray's contract wasn't renewed that Wilma was written back into Season 2's script. Like Trek, the show tried to take on themes that were far more topical. There were lessons to be learned. However, for me as a young teenage boy, the only lesson that I really learned during that ill-fated second season was that Buck Rogers in the 25th century was no longer fun. Truthfully, I can't remember if I even finished watching all of the 13 episodes that comprised Season 2. I did catch them all much later on, but I'm pretty sure when that final episode aired in the spring of 1981, I wasn't around. I'd moved on to greener pastures. Alright, let's end this video on a high note with a photo of a couple of the great characters from Season 1. And yes, Wilma during Season 1 was a much different character than whoever Erin Gray was portraying later on. And Ardala, well, wherever you went, my princess, I hope you at long last found a loving and truly evil partner to rule the cosmos with. So that's it. Do you remember the second season of Buck Rogers? And what did you think? Am I off base? Share your memories in the comments section below, and while you're at it, why not subscribe to my channel? I talk about music, movies, and television, mostly from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching.
Chocolate is scrumptious when it crunches. That's why I love Nestle Crunch.
Milk chocolate, so creamy. Blending Krispies, ooh, so dreamy. Gotta have it, it's so scrumptious. Love that chocolate when it crunches. Scrumptious. Chocolate is scrumptious when it crunches. That's why I love Nestle Crunch.
From the producers of Starsky and Hutch, Charlie's Angels.
They work for me. My name is Charlie.
Meet Jill, Kelly, and Sabrina, tempting angels who could capture any man. Charlie's Angels.
I know you think that I'm crazy. I know you think that I've got better things to do, and you might be right, baby. But it don't matter 'cause I'm spending time with you. Yeah, we're hanging out, we're doing nothing, and I'm happy just to be here, hanging out, and I'm feeling like $1,000,000. Yeah, I'm feeling like $1,000,000 when I'm near you. You say you think that I'm lazy. It's hard to argue when I know it's kind of true, 'cause when I'm far away from you, baby, all I can think about is when I'll be with you, when we're hanging out, we're doing nothing, and I'm happy just to be here, hanging out, and I'm feeling like $1,000,000. Yeah, I'm feeling like $1,000,000 when I'm near you.